Here. Oh, I want to say that the streaming gods have smiled upon us. Oh, man, they have indeed. How about those apples? It was just a little blip. No big deal. Worse things have happened. How about that? We had a false start, everybody. Everyone on the internet who's like, why is Ron so jazzed to be on the internet? Well, because we had a false start and I got nervous that something was wrong. And but we're good. It was just a false start. It's fine. Sorry, we're a few minutes late. But what's up? It is Monday, June 8th, in this quarantine year of our Lord 2020. Good afternoon, good evening, good day, good times, good morrow, whatever's going on where you're at. I hope it's great. I hope you are staying safe. And I hope over the weekend, all your dreams came true. I hope you invented something amazing. I hope you're like, hey, Ron, there's a thing now, and it's a thing because of me. I invented it, and it's saving everybody. And I'm like, great, good job. Way to go there. Shout out to the people who make this show possible before we move forward. First of all, our friends over at ZT.com, ZHITEA.com. Their tea kind of rules, and you can get it in wholesale now. So if you like tea, check out some of their tea. I love their tea. I drink their tea all the time. The guy, Jeffrey, great guy, huge lefty, big supporter of the show, supplies me with my tea. So check it out, ZT.com, ZHITEA.com. Also, shout out to our friends over at Trendiest Dabbers for the pain oil, the CBD pain oil that has done wonders for my neck, which, of course, will never be the same since my 2013 car accident. It'll never be the same. I've accepted that. But the only thing that has really done wonders for it, this pain oil. And also, last but certainly not least, the Civvy app, CIVVY app. It is a new app that compartmentalizes civics. It kind of does a summary of issues that affect your life. It also does a summary of which candidates and nominees are most aligned with your personal views and the way you see the world. It just kind of compartmentalizes civics for you. Say that 5 times fast. And the goal of the app is to eventually become a hub for independent news media. So it's a really cool concept. It has no political bias one way or another. It's just information for you, the civically engaged citizen. So check out the Civvy app, CIVVY app. And without further ado, I'm going to bring in my guests today. These are 2 of my favorite comedians in LA, 2 of my favorite people in LA. Really, please welcome to the show. They got an album out now called Brownie Points. It's a joint album that they've done. It's phenomenal. It's hilarious. I love it. Please welcome Raja Michael and Lenny Shelton. What's up, y'all?
Hey, everybody.
Good to see you. Thanks for your patience. I know we got off to a difficult start because the internet was like, we're not ready for this. We're not ready for this yet. And I'm like, come on, internet. It was all right. We're ready now. And I'm like, great. Thanks. Good to see you guys. So how's everything going, first of all?
It's good. Okay. Considering, yeah.
I mean, I was saying off mic, I have no idea what we're going to talk about today because there's like nothing going on in the world. It is such a slow time news-wise. I'm like, well, I'll ask them what they're watching on Netflix or something. I don't know what we're going to talk about. There's nothing going on. But yeah, it's
Tiger King.
That's what, like, sometimes I feel like when we describe this quarantine, it almost sounds like a really weird dream, to someone that's not aware of what it is. Like, it sounds like it sounds like you had like a really weird strain of pot right before you went to bed. and you're just like describing the weirdest dream. Like, yeah, so there was this like pink thing that attacked people's lungs. And because of it, we all had to stay inside. And did anything weird happen? Yeah. Bob Dylan wrote a 16-minute song. He did? Yeah. Like, what was the song about? JFK. Like, what? He wrote in 2020, he wrote a 16-minute song about JFK. Yes. It's like, did anything else happen? Yeah. Everyone was obsessed with this show about tigers in Oklahoma. It's like, dude, you got to lay off that pot. That's the weirdest freaking dream. That's so.
Yeah, stay up all night and wake up at noon. So it's kind of weird.
That has been the nice part of all this. That has been the nice part of all this. So, you guys have been out protesting, as have I. And what has your experience been so far? We'll start there, and then we'll get to some news of the day.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's been peaceful as far as we've seen. Like in our neighborhood, there was a little protest, and the police were there, and then just after a while, they just left because it was so peaceful. And we were worried that maybe they might start something, but they didn't. And then we also went to one downtown. And they had the police there. They had I think the National Guard there, standing around, and helicopters all over the place, But it was fine.
The protesters were all peaceful. The only aggression we saw was from law enforcement. We were lucky that day because nothing happened to us. We know everyone wasn't as lucky in this situation. But in terms of just to be clear, I don't believe that oppressed people have to be peaceful. You know what I mean? So I'm not putting that judgment on anyone. It's not my place to make that judgment, nor do I even believe that. But in reality, the protest we went organized by BLM, where every protester, every organizer, everyone was super peaceful. So yeah, the media has been pretty unfair. The only people that were even trying to intimidate anyone was law enforcement, which there was like an incredible amount of downtown. There were so many in full gear and everything, but protesters were.
That has been my experience too. That has been the experience of everybody I know personally. There's nobody I know personally that has a different story than the one that you guys just gave, that I have the same one to give in my experience. And, I've been to one in LA, and I've also been to ones in Pasadena, and same story. It's been totally peaceful until the cops show up, and then usually something might happen. And it's just one of those things. The media, like you mentioned, the media, this whole thing, like they sell this idea of it's outside agitators on this random anarchy bus going to cause chaos. And they have been using that. I mean, honestly, it's a conspiracy because it's not based on anything real. Like, it's just something they made up. They've been doing that since the civil rights movement. Yeah. They've been doing that like since our parents' day, because they said that same thing. It's outside agitators. Everything's really just fine. Like, no, everything is not fine. And where are these outside agitators? It's like they've been doing the same.
It's more based on the fears of like suburbia, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like of maybe white suburbia, like what they're afraid of is happening. They're reporting as facts.
Yeah, and they wouldn't want white suburbia to fear that law enforcement is abusing their power. They wouldn't want them to fear that. They'd rather it's these outside people that would never move into your community. They're just coming here to cause trouble. So this is happening right now in Minneapolis. This is just pretty much a breaking thing. So Minneapolis City Council says it will disband the police force. Now, so less than 2 weeks since the killing of George Floyd, 9 of the 12 members, which I've seen a couple different reports. Some people are saying it's 13. Others are saying it's 12. But whatever, it's a veto-proof majority. And I think the word they're looking for is proof. What article did I pick? Wow, I might have really shit the bed here. I sift through different ones before I pick one. And I'm just like, I want the one that says poof. And I want that one. I stand with the underdog, damn it. So, all right. So they have a veto-proof majority, or a veto-proof majority, tomato. And so what they're saying here, we are here today to begin the process of ending the Minneapolis Police Department and creating a new transformative model for cultivating safety in Minneapolis. They're going to take immediate steps towards ending the Minneapolis Police Department. Now, it's not clear yet what that process will entail exactly, how long it will take, what the end result will be. Now, and this is, so what they're saying is the goal is to end policing as we know it and recreate systems that actually keep us safe. Now, this has happened in different cities before. One of those cities being, I believe, Camden, New Jersey. And here's what happened when they did that in Camden. So check this out. Camden, New Jersey. Camden, New Jersey also disbanded their police department in 2013. Homicides dropped by 50% to the lowest number since 1987. Crime dropped even more drastically. The police department is now smaller, paid less, and handcuffs / any weapon is a last resort. And as this person points out, and it's true, this is common around the world. This is usually how police forces operate around the world, compared to ours. So disbanding the police means different things in different places. We'll see what it's going to mean in Minneapolis. So this is definitely good news, I would say. But I think as citizens, it's really, I think it's our duty now to say, okay, what is disbanding? How exactly? Because now the way I see it, we're sitting on an opportunity now. And we're sitting on an opportunity to really say, okay, this is what this is going to mean. This isn't just going to mean you're just going to disband this police and then you're going to replace it with another, systemically rot system where the same problem is eventually going to happen. It's not going to happen for a little while because, people are really paying attention, but we're not really going to do anything to address the system here. So the same thing will inevitably happen. This is an opportunity to say, okay, we're done. We are completely, we're done with this. We're disbanding it. We're defunding it. We're demilitarizing it. And we're starting again. And here's what that means. So what are your guys' take? Like, what are some true systemic solutions for this thing?
Well, one thing would be is, you don't need armed officers for every situation. You know what I mean? I mean, like, you don't need a guy with a gun to come to your house because, of a noise complaint or whatever. You know what I mean? It's like every situation in our country, you're encouraged to call armed people to come to your house or to come to you, and that's completely unnecessary. Like I've seen a lot of cops even say that, they'll go their whole careers without ever even really using their gun. So if that's the case, then they don't need them, So we can have, maybe we can have like an organization, a community-based organization of, unarmed people who can, help with these situations where, it's not necessary. And then most of these police forces around the world, they don't bring in armed forces unless it's absolutely necessary.
Why do you need a gun because someone's having a house party?
Yeah.
It makes no sense. Yeah. Like, there's worse things in the world than loud music,
The only thing that could happen is a drunken mistake. That's the only thing that can happen in that situation. Someone's just like, yeah, we're having a good time, bang, bang. And it's like, oh, that's going to come down. That's not, that wasn't good that you just did that. That wasn't cool at all. Just like, why does a town of 9,000 need a tank?
Also, I think domestic violence is a big thing and I want to speak like making sure I don't I'm not an expert, and I don't want to pretend I am. But one area I do know about is domestic violence because I was a domestic violence worker for a long time. And oftentimes I think, and people get very scared because I see, and I think it's genuine because it's hard to get in, like, we're all so socialized that we need law enforcement. So I understand getting a new idea is hard. And one of the big things people say is, what about domestic violence victims? And I understand the compassion people have when they bring up that concern. But just for myself, as someone who worked in domestic violence for a long time, I will tell you that the police are not useful at all. And in fact, they make it worse. And there's a huge, enmity almost between there is between domestic violence workers and police in a lot of places, because oftentimes, they do see us as enemies, and police, I don't work there anymore, but I did for a long time. And police oftentimes hate domestic violence workers because the number one profession for abusers is police. So they're not really there to help us. They feel like we're hurting their friends, and they always feel like, oh, she lied. That's my coworker. He would never do that. So it's really dangerous to help. If you have a domestic violence victim in your program, whose partner is or abuser is a police officer, everyone's on red alert. Every worker, every client, every volunteer, everyone's life is in danger, and we know that. So I feel like I understand the compassion people have when they bring up that concern, but in real life, it hasn't helped. And the other thing with domestic violence calls is, there's a lot of police officers, they have to arrest if anyone's injured. So so a lot of times when a victim is being assaulted, they use reactive force. So they get to the home and the victim isn't bleeding, because you don't always bleed from being assaulted. But maybe I shouldn't say she, but they scratched their abuser and the abuser's bleeding like here. A scratch is not an offensive wound. It's a defensive wound, and but because he's or they, whoever the abuser is injured, the victim gets arrested. So a lot of in domestic violence calls, police almost always arrest both parties or sometimes just the victim. So it's really not helping in that situation. A lot of police officers have something like domestic response teams, volunteers who are social workers who go out with them, and they do better work than the police officers do. So I feel like it's unfortunate that they're volunteers. They should get paid for their work, but I feel that and even in saying that, I think there's a lot of racial injustice in the social work world that we have to also look at. I'm not trying to put social services on a, I'm not saying we're innocent, because I think there's a lot of problems in our world too. But police are really not helpful in situations of domestic violence. So if that could give people some peace in being worried about that, it actually will make it better.
No, I mean that's in essential. That's a huge important point, because that's the number one thing people throw out there. And I, like you were saying, I get it, because I understand there are situations that happen in our world where, the use of force or whatever it may be is absolutely 100% unavoidable and necessary for the safety of a populace. I get that. But, so what I think needs to happen, and, this has been on, I think, everyone's mind a lot the past couple of weeks, is first of all, a complete demilitarization and kind of a reassessment on what it means to have police and what it means, like Lenny saying, why does everybody need a gun? Everybody doesn't. The person who pulls you over, why do they need a gun? The person who's just, kind of making sure that like people are just going about their business and no one's harming anyone, why do they need a gun? Now, someone who's called to a domestic abuse situation, or a situation where there is somebody with a gun who may be mentally unstable. I mean, we should have designations for this. We should have specialized where that person who responds to that type of call has been trained for years, has been properly screened, understands what it means to defend both themselves and other people, is accompanied by a mental health professional who I think should be a paid salary person as well. You just have, I guess the most basic, simple way to put it is aces in their places. And let's make sure these are actual aces. Let's make sure these are people who are trained properly and have gone through years of extensive screening and training courses and the whole 9 yards to be able to handle these types of things. And that's not going to be the same person who pulls you over for a busted taillight. Yeah. Or who gets a call because someone was allegedly using a counterfeit $20 bill or whatever it may be. And
we should never arrive at that situation. It kind of like that was not an emergency situation. Yeah, they should not have been there ever. So what if there's a counter? Like, it wasn't even counterfeit, right? But so what if there was?
Right.
There's insurance for that. Like,
yeah.
Oh, I fully agree. Or what if we had actual peace officers who would designate it to handle something like that? Where they're just like, okay, this is a counterfeit $20 bill. You guys just go about your way and go about your business. And, in a perfect world, they would just replace it right then and there. They would just assume, they're like, okay, nobody knew that this gets into circulation. It happens. Here's a real $20 bill. Have a nice day, everybody. And we have a fund that handles this and replenishes it. So no big deal. And that would be the end of it. And the other big thing that I've been really, and let me get your guys' opinion on this. I think one of the first things we need to do, I think the very first thing, completely demilitarize. And then the next step is to reinvent what having law enforcement in our lives means. Which means the concept of a police officer as we know it becomes a thing of the past that our kids and grandkids learn about in history books. And their response is, how crazy is it a job like that even existed? Now we have peace officers and some of these trained, like professionals that handle combat situation. I've never even met one of those in person. I know they exist in case of an emergency. I've never even met one of them, though. I have no idea who even has that job. You know what I mean? And the other big thing I think to accomplish that is we have an elected board of civilians that, and I think it should be a paid job, because it's not going to be easy having this position. And I think that civilian board kind of directs how police is conducted, what kind of police a community has. And again, this is a board that is elected by the people, that answers to the people. And these have to be civilians. These cannot be people that are in law enforcement themselves. They have to be separate. And they are elected, and they dictate, this is what we want from law enforcement. This is how we want this handled. This is how we want a traffic citation handled. And this is who we want handling it. And this is how we want a domestic violence call handled. And this is who we want handled. These are the mental health professionals we want beside them. And whenever there is any type of report of, police misconduct, no matter how small or severe it is, that board decides whether or not they keep their job. And if there is further punishment for that police officer, they are treated just like a regular citizen. Oh, and by the way, you know what are two separate things? Whether or not that police officer keeps their job and further punishment. Because the board might decide, hey, guess what? Technically, what you did in this situation was self-defense, but we don't think you needed to beat this person to a pulp because they, whatever the situation is. I'm just making up for instances in my head. But maybe the court of law decided that something was self-defense. Because, honestly, I think our self-defense laws are very, very, very lenient in this country. And that's a different topic for a different day. That could be a totally different topic for a different day. But I think they're very lenient. So the board might decide, you know what? That's fine. The court of law said that was self-defense, but we voted, you ain't a police officer anymore. You're done. So I think that needs to happen. And anything less, you're just asking for the same thing to happen again. What do you guys think?
Yeah. I agree with that, and I think also to take it even further, normally I support unions, but these police unions have way too much power, and they abuse their power, and they have even in instances where you have maybe an oversight board, these police unions have influence over them, and a lot of times these boards just go along with the police anyway. So I'm not exactly sure what it would entail, but that whole system needs to be reformed as well.
Oh yeah. The police union system.
Because imagine if every time there's an incident, I believe in defunding over reform, but just imagine that there was every time any police officer uses force or murders somebody or abuses someone or injures somebody, everyone's pay gets docked. Your chief, everyone above you gets something pulled out of their pay and their pension because they didn't train you right. Everyone who works with you gets something taken out of their pay and their pension because they didn't report you. And then you get something pulled out of your pay. You get fired, hopefully, but everybody gets, a punishment for that. There's because that's the big thing with the police, right? It's like such a fraternity that no one's telling on each other. And the ones who do get pushed out. So that's why you can't be a good cop, because if you be a good cop, you're going to lose your job anyway. Like being a good cop means you have to retire earlier. You know what I mean? Like it's also,
no, totally.
But if everyone lost money, like there's no greater loyalty than to your paycheck and your bank account. Everyone's got, you need rent, you got family to feed. But the union protects them from ever having to have those kind of consequences. But if everyone had to pay something, they'll be ratting on each other in no time. You're not going to, you know what I mean? Like if you're going to touch someone's money, they're going to change.
Well, what if we did this then? The civilian oversight board, they get paid hourly. So that means if police are assholes, they get a salary, but they also have like an hourly, like, hey, if police have a bunch of misconduct and we need to be meeting to figure all this stuff out, that's taking more hours out of our day-to-day operations. So we get time and a half. And that comes out of their paycheck. Right? What if we did that? What if it's just like, hey, we have to deliberate on this stuff because, like abusive power Magoo over there is being an asshole. So we're deliberating. We're spending all this time figuring out what to do. Oh, by the way, he's fired. But we're figuring out what else to do. That's taking time. So we get time and a half, and it's coming out of all of your paychecks. Or better yet, that time and a half, some of it goes to them for their time and the rest goes into social services, and it's taken directly out of the police officers' paychecks. I'm for it.
Yeah, but you can't do that because of police unions. Police unions are so powerful that it's really right now, we have to I'm trying to find the right words, but there's such a huge force that it's hard to pass something like that or even propose it because they'll defend the police.
Yeah, I mean, the word I've been trying to use is like reinvent. Because it's like, I mean, everyone said reform. And it's like, no, reform, we're past that. It's too late. It's too little too late. We can't reform this. You know, I mean, it's a systemic disease. That's why it's like the whole like, oh, bad apples. It's like, no, that's not, you're missing. That's like we have an E. coli outbreak and you take one shred of lettuce and you're like, this one's fine. Like that's not, it's a systemic disease.
People forget the rest of the phrase. It's a few bad apples spoil the bunch.
Right.
So people are misusing that phrase. Like they forget that there's another side half of that sentence.
Yeah. So here, I want to show this because this kind of goes into, this is a story I wanted to share. And this kind of goes into that whole thing where it's like, this is a systemic problem. So this guy is a professor at University of Florida. And check out this thread. This is, oh wait, let me put it back up so y'all see it. A long time ago when I was younger and dumber, I did a police ride along with a high school classmate who had gone on to become a cop. It was one of the most chilling and radicalizing nights of my life. Two memories stand out to me. The first is how my classmate spent most of the night rolling around suburban Maryland in a patrol car, punching his license plate number into a database, looking for excuses to pull people over, serving and protecting. My classmate was so bored so right away, I mean, getting back to what we were just talking about earlier, why does this dude, not the dude writing this, but why does the person he's describing, why does that guy need a gun? First of all, we'll start there.
My job had nothing to do.
He's bored. He's bored. So he devoted special attention to beat up cars or drivers who look, quote, out of place, which typically meant black or brown drivers in predominantly white neighborhoods. So I can share this right now. So when I was like full-time on the road, I had a 98 Honda Accord that was pretty beat up. This car was about 270,000 miles in, had 5 drivers before me, had lived in a bunch of different states, had an engine that refused to die. His name was Eddie, because when I got that car, I looked at that car and I was like, you're an old blues musician named Eddie. But and me and Eddie had a good time. But Eddie had tinted windows. And most of the time, Eddie was in a different state. So Eddie had out-of-state plates, usually where I was driving. And I'm not even embellishing. I would get pulled over on a regular basis. And they would, and it was literally, and I knew this, it was because the cops were bored. They saw tinted windows and an out-of-state license plate. And they decided, we're going to see what's going on and make sure this is nothing to worry about. And then they would see my face and they would decide I was nothing to worry about. Why did they decide that? Because I'm white. That's why. That was it. I mean, I would have police officers just pull me over. They'd have this kind of look of fear about them until I rolled down my window. And then all of a sudden their demeanor would change and they would just be like, one guy was like, oh, you didn't do anything wrong. That was how he opened. He's like, you didn't do anything wrong. And I was like, yeah, I know that. That's why I'm wondering what's going on here. He's like,
it's like, yeah, how could you have been doing something wrong? You were just driving.
Yeah. And he just goes, I was just making sure you weren't too tired or something. It looked like you swerved a little bit back there. Oh, and wow. I was like, I did. And he goes, it might have just been the wind. And I almost was this close to being like, dude, can you just tell me that you're bored and you saw out-of-state plates and tinted windows and you just decided to pull me over and you saw that I was white and now you don't care. Just like, if you admitted that to me, at least I'd be like, well, at least you're telling the truth. Because that's what's really going on here. That's what's really going on here. And so, yeah, I mean, getting back to this thread, it's like, that's totally believable that this is a guy who just goes around looking for people to pull over for whatever reason. And the story gets better. So my classmate was so bored. All right. So fortunately, few of those searches resulted in traffic stops. I seem to recall my classmate pulling over a guy for a broken taillight, but for the most part, he spent the night driving around aimlessly. To punctuate his boredom, my classmate will respond to other cops' traffic stops. Because whenever there's an incident, usually the best thing for it is more cops. That usually helps. Yeah. When he heard another cop had pulled someone over, he'd turn on his lights and tear off into the night. Most of the time, he'd arrive at the scene of the stop long after the incident had passed. One time, though, the traffic stop was ongoing. In this instance, a colleague of his had pulled over a car for some trivial reason, a broken taillight, expired registration, whatever, and discovered that the driver was, as I recall, an ex-convict driving with an expired license. The guy was white, had gotten out of prison earlier in the week, and hadn't had the chance to renew his license yet. When he got pulled over, he was driving around with his wife and his young kids. Not content to leave this poor guy with a warning, the officer who initiated the traffic stop asked him to step out of his car for a conversation. That usually goes great. As they were talking, more and more bored cops rolled up, including my classmate. Not surprising, the situation kept getting more intense. The guy who had been pulled over looked increasingly stressed as more cops materialized, and the cops responded to his stress with heightened levels of aggression. Eventually, the scene came to a boil. I don't know exactly what happened. I seem to recall the guy taking a swing at a cop or raising his voice. Regardless, he wound up face down on the curb, his hands cuffed behind his back. His family looked on screaming and crying as the cops hauled him away. It had been a short family reunion. As we drove away, my classmate told me that because this guy had violated his parole, he would likely do a multi-year stint in prison. And that was the night. A full shift devoted to manufacturing crime, desperately searching for reasons to pull people over and then harassing people until they snapped. And this is the last thing I'll read. And I think this guy makes a good point. My classmate wasn't an exception to his department's rule. He wasn't a quote unquote bad apple. As he told it, he was doing exactly what his department expected him to do. He saw himself, in fact, had been trained to see himself as a dog protecting sheep from wolves. But from inside his car, the sheep receded from view, and all the flesh and blood people in his community, and especially the people of color, took on a decidedly wolf-like aspect. He clearly viewed them as enemies and interacted with them as such. In short, nothing he did made anyone safer. Wow. Serve and protect.
Yeah. So you see, even the cops know how useless they are, so they have to manufacture shit. You know?
It's like that just dispels all doubt. It's like this guy, he's just driving around looking to cause trouble. Those are, I mean, that's not law enforcement.
It's like a home.
It's like what?
It's like a home monitor with power and a gun, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and even worse, it's just like, it's like these are the kids who didn't have enough to do in high school. Like let's drive around looking for trouble.
Yeah.
So I mean, did that surprise you guys at all though? Like in a way, it's like these firsthand accounts are so valuable because it really just forces you to just look something in the face. But then it's like none of this isn't stuff we didn't already know.
Mm-hmm.
No, they're very bored. I remember when I once when I first moved here, I had out-of-state plates on my car, and I was driving to church. That's the funniest part, on a Sunday morning with a friend, and we got pulled over. And I think it was something to do with my car. I think like the blinker wasn't working, or something. I'm not sure. But I also had an out-of-state license plate. And this police officer pulled us over. We pulled over, and I said, "Thank you so much. I was expecting a warning." And then it was before when those GPS, we used to stick them on the windshield, remember?
Oh, yeah.
So then he started saying he was going to write me up for the GPS that didn't follow some code, which I'd never heard of before. And then, and I had sunglasses on, and he kept accusing us of going home after a party.
And wait, you said, what time was it? Oh, so it was the next morning because you were going to church.
I was going to church on a Sunday morning. And I was like one of these really progressive hippie churches, so we weren't dressed in church clothes. We were just wearing regular clothes. So to him, it didn't look like he kept saying, "You don't look like you're dressed to go to church." And I was like, "Yeah, well, we go to I told him we go to this really casual progressive church, so they don't care about clothes there." And he kept saying, "Oh, you look like you're going to a party." I was in my 20s still, so I was I used to dress up a lot more. So maybe to him, it didn't look like church clothes. Me and my friend. So then I made a mistake. Because he was like, "What, were you out drinking all night? Were you just sober enough to get home?" Like he was trying to say we were walk of shaming, and we're showered and makeup and everything, you know what I mean? And so I took my sunglasses off because I thought maybe if he sees that my eyes are not red or tired, he would understand, So I did that, and as soon as I did that, he was just like, "Oh," he starts hitting on me. He's like, "You have beautiful eyes." He starts hitting on me, then tells me he thinks I'm drunk, and he made me get out of the car and do like a whole drug walk just so he could stare at me.
God.
It was so scary. Like, and I'm not trying to elevate my problem to obviously what Black and Latino people face in America. I know it's nothing close to that. But then he just made me stand there forever and just leered, like creepy, stared at me the whole time. Then he told me to get into his car because he's going to take me to the police station. So I was like, okay.
What did you do?
He said he
didn't do anything.
He just said I was drunk.
Oh my God. And you passed everything.
And so then and then I was really afraid to be alone with him. But fortunately, I do know my rights to a degree, and I'm also not a targeted minority in this country. So I feel like if I was, I don't know if I'd be alive, you know. But I started saying, hey, look, I need you to give me a breathalyzer. You know, I know my right. If you're going to say I'm drunk, I require a breathalyzer. And then after that, and I started speaking up for myself a little. I think, because they also know, I don't know. So then he let me go. But that was like a really long time that he just had me standing out there staring at my ass, like basically out in the middle of nowhere. And I do think that when I spoke back, I think maybe if I was, I'm South Asian, I'm not from a targeted minority group. So I think if I was, I don't know how that would have ended. I think I got out of that without injury or alive because of my race, honestly. But because he was asking me that, he's like, oh, are you Indian? Like your eyes are so this and that, you know? And I was just like, what, you know, and then I was like, oh my God, this guy is so bored. He has nothing to do on a Sunday morning. So he's just sexually harassing women that he sees on the road. You know what I mean? And
I got that disgusting.
And the friend of mine, who's also a person of color, was like, oh yeah, he was so nice to let you go. And I was like, how brainwashed are we? That was not nice. Like, would you have thought that if you were out there? I was like, just because he was using polite words, what he did was really gross, you know? So yeah, and that's when I was just like, oh, these guys are incredibly bored. Like they have nothing to do. So they're just harassing people. And I think he was hoping that I would do something or say something that could justify him escalating it, you know?
Or he was hoping that his theories based on absolutely nothing were correct, and you guys were coming back from a party, or something like that, and you weren't sober or whatever. I mean, it's so unbelievable. I mean, I've seen like guides out there where they're like, well, this is how you talk to cops if you ever have an altercation, and it's like you have to be so careful with your words because the smallest thing might have them fly off the handle. And it's like, why do we tolerate this? I mean,
good job.
Yeah. I mean,
like, can I just say, like, hearing you guys' experience with the police, I'm like, wow, it's not that bad.
I mean, I know that's the thing. I know it, man. I mean, I've had, for instances where cops have, they've wanted to search my car, and they always say, use the words, I'd prefer you didn't, because it is your right that unless they have probable cause, they can't search your car. But don't say you can't search my car. That's my right. They're like, don't say that. Say, I'd prefer you didn't. I don't feel comfortable with that. That's what I did. And the cop kept trying, like, let me in your car. And I'd be like, I'd prefer you didn't. I don't feel comfortable. And eventually he gave up on it. But, he probably would have found some lame, like, this is probable cause, if I was black.
Yeah. I mean, I've had my experiences with the cops, and I've had, guns pulled on me, and, I've been caught.
Whoa, you gotta tell us a story now. You can't just leave that alone.
Well, I mean, the probably like the biggest one was, I was driving, and just all of a sudden I got boxed in by all these cops, and they all came out with guns pointed at me, and there was, a helicopter, and, it was like this big crowd of cops that just surrounded me, and I had to get out of the car, get face down on the ground, and I was cuffed and this whole thing. And then they said that, well, your car's in our database reported as stolen, and then which it wasn't. Obviously, I had all my papers and everything, and they let me go. But the whole thing is, like, every instance I've had where I've gotten pulled over or I've had cops approach me with their guns drawn, it was never for something that was necessary to have your guns out. Like, even if I did steal a car, you don't need 20 cops with shotguns because somebody stole a car. You know what I mean? Like, it's completely unnecessary, or I've had instances where, I was just, standing on the street, and then all of a sudden, these cops come and with their guns drawn, they say, oh, we heard there was a gang fight, or we heard you fit the description of this suspect or whatever. And it's like, I'm just standing here, you know what I mean? You don't need, it's always, they always escalate the situations, you know what I mean? And one thing I want people to understand is, because a lot of people say like, well, why don't you just comply? And why don't you just, do what they say? And what a lot of people don't understand who haven't been in that situation is like, when you have like a bunch of cops running up on you with guns drawn and you haven't done anything, it's hard to process, it's hard in that moment, because you're like, what? I didn't do anything wrong. And they're all yelling, oh, get your hands up, like it's hard to process, what the right thing to do is. What happens is you get scared. And when you're scared, you want to run, or you want to say, no, I didn't do anything wrong. You know what I mean? Because that's what happened to me. Because I was like, no, I didn't do anything wrong. And, they were coming to my car with guns. And I was like, there's nothing in there. You know what I mean? But I could honestly, like, maybe I could have gotten shot for that, and they would have been like, well, he resisted, So, so that's one thing I really want people to understand, that, it's hard to process when you're in that situation.
And it's just, the systemic racism in law enforcement, which can be traced back to generations. And it's like, after Ferguson happened, Anonymous revealed to us that there are just open KKK members, literally open KKK members, given badges and guns. And you've seen more of that circulating on Facebook. They're showing, or not, Twitter mostly, but they're circulating these photos of these registered cops. They get their descriptions. They're like, this is who this is. They have a white power tattoo. I mean, they're attracted to the job so they can brutalize minorities. That's what they want to do. That's their sole purpose. And they're getting through, and nothing's being done. And people are still hesitant to say that this is a systemic disease that needs to just be gutted and restart. Full stop. We're starting over. You can reform that. You can't reform that.
Yeah,
it's too deep.
Yeah. And also, I want to say, because that story that you recounted was, the victim was a white man. And I want people to understand, because people want to say like, well, white people get pulled over and white people get killed by the police too. And yes, they do. But I want people to understand that, like, for this system to continue, yes, some white people have to be sacrificed for the system to continue. And that's always been that way, because the system is mainly designed to oppress Black people and people of color. And if some white people get caught up in that, well, so be it, because we need this system to continue. So if some poor white people, have to die, well, that's fine,
Yeah. I mean, here's something a little brighter. I wanted to share this. This has been circulating around Facebook. It's one of those like copy and paste and share things. And it kind of summarizes, it's a pretty solid summary. This is what protesting has accomplished so far. Here's a summary. Within 10 days of sustained protests, Minneapolis bans use of chokeholds. Charges are upgraded against Officer Chauvin, and his accomplices are arrested and charged. So I think I've heard this from some other people, and I'm still learning all the ins and outs of it. Right now, it's a second-degree murder, and that's good, because they would have a very, very hard time proving first degree. So if they went for it, there's a chance he could get acquitted. Like that's what I've been told by people who kind of understand those designations a little bit better than I do. Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
I mean, I would say historically, yes, that would be the case. I don't know if that'll happen in this case, because like, the whole world is watching,
Right.
this, and I mean, they clearly don't want any more unrest, in that city, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean it's a tough judgment call because it's I mean I'm glad it's second and not third, but some people are saying, well, he knew the guy, so you can make the case for first that this totally could have been a completely premeditated thing, and it's like, yeah, but if that's harder to prove, I mean my personal at the end of the day, my personal take is I want this guy to go to jail for the rest of his freaking life. That's what should happen. He should spend the rest of his life in jail without a chance of ever getting out, ever. Whatever sentence he gets that makes that a reality, I don't really care. You know what I mean? Like I just want this guy in jail for the rest of his life, and I want the other people who are involved to be in jail for the rest of their lives too. That's what I want. Like full stop. And now, so let's see here. Dallas adopts a duty to intervene rule that requires officers to stop other cops who are engaging in inappropriate use of force. It's sad that even needs to be a thing, but at least it's a thing now. New Jersey's Attorney General said the state will update its use of force guidelines. First time in 20 years that's happened. In Maryland, a bipartisan work group of state lawmakers announced a police reform work group. Reform doesn't go far enough, but it's, they're starting. Los Angeles City Council introduced a motion to reduce LAPD's $1.8 billion operating budget. 100 to 150 million. It's a start. It's not enough. And by the way, Michael Moore needs to be fired and Eric Garcetti needs to resign. What do you guys think on that?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think I'm happy that there's going to be more money going to minority communities, but it to me, like they're trying to throw us a bone, Yeah. It's a small amount compared to the budget.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So let's see. MBTA in Boston agrees to stop using public buses to transport police officers to protests. I don't know if that, I mean, they'll just drive. But, police brutality captured on camera leads to near immediate suspensions and firings and officers in several cities, Buffalo and Fort Lauderdale. Did you guys see that old guy that they pushed over, that older gentleman in Buffalo? Yeah, they cracked. And that guy, he's 75 years old and he's a peace officer. He's a peace activist in Buffalo. And he was out there, and supposedly too, based on some of the photos that have been released, he was actually going to hand a police officer a helmet they dropped.
Yeah.
Like a police officer dropped a helmet. He was just going to like give it back to them. Like he was protesting, but he was just like, here, you drop this. They shoved him over and cracked his skull. I mean, that's like,
see, and like that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. That guy they saw, we can sacrifice this guy. He's an old man, So yeah, he can be, fed into the wood chipper so that this system can continue.
I mean, in what civilized society is your first reaction when someone approaches you, and a 75-year-old guy at that, and he's approaching you to give you a piece of property that's yours back, and your initial reaction is to shove the guy over and crack his skull? Like that's just like there's something seriously wrong with you. You're not fit to hold a job, let alone a job where you get a badge and a gun. And let's be honest, a license to kill. You're not fit to hold a job. That's how you react to a person approaching you. It's just like, it's beyond sick.
Yeah, these are people who they prey on the weak, or they prey on the people who they see as weak or powerless. Yeah, it's by design that they do this.
So this was kind of cool. Monuments celebrating Confederates are removed in cities in Virginia, Alabama, other states. Street in front of the White House is renamed Black Lives Matter Plaza. This is interesting. Now again, this is, I mean, I just saw this from someone I'm friends with on Facebook, but this is going all around Facebook. Military forces begin to withdraw from DC. Now, and yeah, let's take a step back and think about that for a second. We're so, and I'm not saying this to demean the Facebook post itself. I'm saying that like let's just kind of take a step back and look at the world of affairs. We're celebrating the fact that we have withdrawn national forces that were there in the first place against our own people. I mean, that's what happened. Like National Guard, national forces against American citizens. Where are all like the libertarians at? Like, where are they? Where are they?
Yeah. They've been telling all of us that the society can regulate. Like, where are they?
Where are they? It's like, and it's some of the same people where it's like, we have the right to get a haircut. Some of those same people are now like, guys, we have a curfew. The cops are mad. Be good. Like, are you kidding me? Like, this is authoritarian fascism. That's what this is.
Yeah.
Did you ever thought I mean, first of all, I don't know about you guys, but I feel like we should all add, got through the pandemic and martial law on our LinkedIn profiles, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's like, hey,
right now, right?
Right? Yeah, that can go in our intros when we're being brought to the stage. Got through the pandemic and martial law. Like what a double whammy. Double whammy. But it's like you take a step back and you're just, this is nuts. And that's why people all over the world are protesting.
Yeah.
And it's like they're protesting. It's like it is insane what law enforcement does in the US. This is not law enforcement. This is just a legalized authoritarian racist gang. That's what this is. And people have had it, and people have reached their breaking point. And you're putting a pandemic on top of this. And I guess for me personally, the one thing that gives me a little bit of hope is the fact that this is like numerically the biggest protest in like pretty much the history of the United States, right?
Yeah. It is.
It's like, and during a pandemic.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I mean, I know a couple people in my life, and I know there's a lot of people that are in the boat of, we would love to be out there, but we can't because we're either immunocompromised or, I have a friend of mine. He's like, look, I have an 89-year-old relative who lives with me. I can't be out there in something like that right now. So, I participate, and there are other ways to participate. There are a lot of things you can do, right?
Yeah.
Well, and just things right from your computer. I mean, I don't know if you guys saw, we had a very controversial facial recognition bill in California. It was AB 2261, and we stopped it. I mean, people made phone calls. I mean, I made a phone call to my assemblyman, and I know it's really hard to look at small victories right now because there's so much going on in the world, but had that thing gone forward, it would have really further authorized more mass surveillance by the police. And, and this is something we all know, the people that are most brutalized by those types of policies are not people who look like me. They're people who look like y'all. I mean, like there's statistics showing that, because most of the mismatches happen amidst Black people and people of color. And those are the people who suffer most under this facial recognition technology. They're the ones most brutalized on it. And the entire populace does not benefit from it. It's terrible for everyone, but it's especially terrible. Yeah.
For some communities over others.
Oh, big time. And they sent people to countries they've never been to so far. Based on this, they get this mismatch. Oh, you're not supposed to be here. You're an illegal immigrant, and then they ship them back. They sent some guy to Iraq. He's never been there before. He's an American citizen. He got some ridiculous mismatch. They sent him away. I mean, this stuff's happening, and it's just so. I mean, we did stop another bill like that from coming into California, which was at least something. But man, what a time. I mean, it's like you take a step back and you're like, we're going through this. And, a lot of the stuff we talked about today, if you tune into the corporate media, you hear this constantly. All the stuff we talked about today, they're talking about that nonstop there. I mean, MSNBC, CNN, Fox News, they're very concerned about police brutality over there. They're doing what they can to help. They're really, in fact, here's a for instance. Check this out. This happened in my hometown of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Look at this. The Pittsburgh Post-Gazette removes protests and police brutality stories from website following protests from union members. Oh, and what union are they referring to? That union we talked about earlier.
Yes.
The police union.
Because they're afraid of them.
Yeah.
They're afraid of the police. So they are being bullied.
It's amazing. And you know, it's just the biggest like whataboutism someone can throw at, you know, like someone like you know, like left-leaning people. Like, hey Ron, you're pretty pro-union, right? Yes, I am. Police unions. All right, touche. Yeah, I get it. Isn't that amazing? Like, it's like we have this, even right now, we have this completely complicit media.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do. They're afraid. And not just, oh, I'm sorry, honey, go ahead. No.
And then on top of that, we're also seeing police officers just openly abusing journalists on camera. You know, I mean, yeah, it's crazy.
And they're like abusing I saw one video of this white woman who looked like a Barbie doll, and they were just pelting her with rubber bullets, and she was on the ground. And it's like, wow, they're even attacking like pretty white girls now on TV, like in front of cameras. I wasn't expecting to see her being shot like that. You know what I mean? So it's they're afraid.
They're gonna try to uphold the system at all costs.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, it's absolutely amazing that there's still, and it's like, if you're not outraged, I mean, and everyone, you know, to kind of like just hammer home the theme that we've talked about a lot today, like everyone, it's like people are so scared of a complete reinvention in law enforcement. And it's like, if not now, when? And I know that's a cliche, but that's the ultimate question. If not now, when? Because, you know, I mean, you can say, well, that sounds idealistic and radical, and that sounds unrealistic to completely reinvent the concept of law enforcement in our country. And it's like, you know, what's more unrealistic? What's more unrealistic is that we can continue this status quo of racist brutality. We can't. We just can't. And it's also unrealistic to think that this system can reform itself. That cops are going to do better. How many chances have they been given for how many decades?
Yeah.
I mean, what have we learned since 92? Anything?
Yeah. Well, the police did an investigation and determined that everything was fine. So, they put out a nice report that said, yeah, everything's fine. They're doing everything right.
Well, there are videos of them dancing, so there is that.
Oh,
there's videos. Which, I mean, I know, you know, I shared some of that stuff, and the reason I shared it is not to say, you know, because the reason I see value in it is not to say, look, guys, there's some good cops, they're dancing. No, the opposite. What I see value in is being able to look at that and say, notice how when they put down their weapons and just listen for a freaking second, what happens? No violence. Notice when they stay away, what happens? No violence. So who's inciting the violence?
Yeah.
I'll give you one guess, because this is an easy one. It's like when you have a consistency rate of about 100%, that, gee, when police don't instigate violence, it doesn't happen. When police don't show up, violence doesn't happen. What trend are you noticing here?
Yeah, even with drugs, right? Like, it's police that make it a big violent situation. Like, every country that stopped using police to respond to drug use or selling drugs, the drug use went down and drug addiction went down. So, like, Portugal did that, where they had one of the highest like drug use rates in the world, because, you know, they're suffering, and then they stopped using any law enforcement to deal with drug use or selling drugs or anything to do with drugs, and they reallocated that money into programs for like social services for people using drugs, and their drug addiction rate dropped so dramatically that now they're like a leader in the world for that. So, you know what I mean? So even that is a big thing that people are always using police for, and it just doesn't do any help. It just makes the situation so much worse.
Yeah. Well, and that goes into like just another just powerful concept, which, obviously we don't have time to like dive into today, but like just the concept of like our penal system does not help people at all. Like it does not. And we treat people with addictions like criminals instead of treating them as people who are sick and need help. I mean, but it's all connected to this, brutality of law enforcement. And it goes into the for-profit prison system, and it goes into, the crime bill. It goes into, I mean, all these things are connected.
Right? Bail is just a money racket, right? Like, the majority of people sitting in jails right now in America have not even been convicted of a crime, right? More than half. It's just they couldn't afford bail.
Yeah.
It's in their best interest to escalate every situation and, harsher sentences and more surveillance and militarized police, because they keep doing this, then people will notice, oh, we don't actually need all this stuff, we don't actually need this system.
It's a way that they make money. It's a way for the government, the city, the town, the county, they make money off of people who are in prison. They make money from their bails, from their legal fees.
Well, and the other scary thing, they create a demand for it. When you have a capitalistic society and you create a demand for prisoners, you're going to want those bloodthirsty psychopaths out there. That's who you want out there, because they're going to give you those prisoners, because they're going to, again, getting back to that thread, they're manufacturing crime.
Yeah.
What if we renamed every force crime manufacturers? Imagine how people would react.
Crime Manufacturers Inc.
Yeah, there you go. Crime Manufacturers Inc. So where can people find out more about you guys? We got some thoughts here. Anthony says 95% peaceful equals 95% media coverage of the other 5%. Yeah, and they don't mention that the cops are inciting stuff. Sparky, defund the FBI and CIA. They've been beyond useless. Sparky also says, since the 60 SCOTUS ruling, cops effectively have a license to kill. They're like uncool, awkward, and thuggish James Bonds. All right, I can accept that. Cops need gun to menace the public at large. Enemy combatants while protecting global elites. Cops go after those whom they perceive as vulnerable. Courts get pissed if they arrest people who might clog up the docket by defending themselves. Yeah, that's very true. And Redneckonomics, what's up? Good to see you. Amazing live stream today. Thank you, Redneckonomics. Very informative and constructive conversation. Thank you very much for that, Redneckonomics. And please check out that show, Redneckonomics. And Lenny and Raja, where can people find you? Where can they get the album? Where can they find you? Where can they follow you?
Oh, okay. Well, you can get our album Brownie Points at pretty much every streaming service. It's Spotify, YouTube, Pandora, every Amazon. Yeah, it's all out there. And you can follow me on Twitter at Lenny Shelton.
I think the best place to follow me is Instagram. I'm more active there. It's at Raja Michael Comedy. I'm not really active on Twitter, I'm going to be honest, but Raja Michael Comedy on Instagram. Do
you prefer Instagram over Twitter?
I do. And I'll tell you, I have ADD and I get very overwhelmed by the amount of information there is in Twitter. So I guess that's why Instagram is easier for me.
So I prefer Twitter, and I think it comes down to I'm not a good photographer. I'd rather just use my words. And I'm one of those guys who most of my Instagram presence is just posting screenshots of my tweets.
I'm not a photographer either. I'm just really vain and I post a lot of selfies. So.
Well, see, I mean, I'm vain in the opposite way, because I'll take a selfie and I'll be like, oh, that's my face. No, I can't. The public can't see this.
That's what all the filters are for. Do you think
I'm not good at them?
Like how I look when I take the picture? No, there's a lot of work that goes into that.
Well, guys, thanks so much for being here, and thanks so much for joining this conversation. And everyone out there, thank you so much for your Super Chat contributions. Thank you, Redneck Economics. Thank you, Sparky. Thank you. Oh, we have a couple more here. Redneck Economics, have you seen Eleanor Goldfield's Hard Road to Hope? It's an excellent documentary. I have not. I will have to check it out. But I have a long list of movies I need to see. I really do. And then I think we have one more from Sparky. People should think, when was the last time an interaction I had with the police had a positive outcome? Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. I'm sure. Yeah, that'd be interesting to see people's takes, because yeah, a lot of people are like posting their interactions, and that's very telling. And it's very, it forces you to kind of confront it. So thank you guys so much for the Super Chat contributions. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same channel. Judah Friedlander is my guest tomorrow, so I'll be catching up with him, going through the news of the day. That's going to be cool. Lenny, Shelton, Raja Michael, go follow them on Twitter and Instagram. They're split on the social media platform preferences. We got a tweeter and an Insta-er. I don't know. But it was awesome to see you guys. I can't wait till we can see each other in person and do a show again someday. That's going to be so great when we do a stand-up show in person again. But in the meantime, thanks so much for joining the show today. And everyone out there, you know the drill. Lucy says meow. I say peace. Peace.